we have a special guest in our midst, and is a colleague, is a friend. Um, is my run-to person when I need advice on what to do with my kids health-wise. He's a pediatrician, and I must say is one person I actually trust his advice, and that is the person of Dr. Emmanuel Ajibola. He's going to be speaking to us this evening about um, nutrition, how we can get it right when we are trying to do right by giving our children the best um, um, kind of food. So I'm going to hand over to Dr. Emmanuel Ajibola. You're welcome.
Thank you very much for this invitation. I must say I'm grateful, and it's a honor to be here. I know I'm talking to people who are intellectually sound and definitely have the mind of children. I mean, have children at heart. And for me, that is one of the things that has driven me into this profession, to give value to the lives of children, particularly the ones that I come in contact with. I'm also grateful for the opportunity to share the little knowledge I have, and then probably some of the experiences that I have also got along the line while practicing as a pediatric doctor. And thank you, Dr. Jiboye, for such a huge one. In fact, when I saw the invitation, I said, this is huge. I hope I can share screen so that I can just go on with the presentation I have. I will make this as
Let me do that.
Okay. I will make this as short as possible so that I'll be able to take questions. I believe that things like this ought to be more practical than theoretical. A lot of information out there, including all these WhatsApp messages that are now the order of the day, all kinds of things teaching you what to do and what not to do. I know when it comes to child nutrition, it is always a big task, particularly if let's say, the person involved does not have the right information. Yeah, so I would try as much as possible to make it as simple as possible, because there's a lot of jargons when it comes to children nutrition. Actually, child nutrition dates back to time immemorial. So we cannot overemphasize or do justice. That's the word. Okay, we cannot do justice to child nutrition. No matter how much we say here today, there will still be a lot more to be said. So please bear with me, especially if it is more than or a little less than what you think it will be. I'm trying to be as simple as possible, given the constraints of time that we have. If I start talking about child nutrition, I won't leave here today. At least I'm a little bit sure about that, because it's one of the areas I've been interested in even before I started medical school. I've been worried about, seeing children who someone will say, it's because he's not eating well, that's why it's like this. And then some of us also had the opportunity of not being so rich. Our parents were not so rich, but our nutrition wasn't so bad. And then you see people who are even, at least they are well-to-do, and then their children are not thriving, So I use the topic that I've been given, child nutrition, navigating the terrain of doing it right for optimal child development. So the keywords there are actually optimal child development. And then just to introduce the discussion, there's this quote I came across recently, and it says, children are the living messages we send to a time that we would definitely not see. And we were also messages that some people had sent in time, and some of them may not even be around to see what we are doing right now. And this particular one always follows me everywhere I go. And it's a quote by Gabriela Minstrel. And It reads thus: we are guilty of many errors and many faults, but our worst crime is abandoning the children, neglecting the fountain of life. Many of the things we need can wait. The child cannot. Right now is the time his bones are being formed, his blood is being made, and his senses are being developed. To him, we cannot answer tomorrow. His name is today. Today. Let's remember this quote. And of course, as we talk about children, there is no way we will not go into many other areas, but if we can get nutrition right, I'm sure we will do well in all the other aspects. So just to talk about nutrition generally, it has a big role in that aspect we're trying to talk about, that is optimal development of a child. And proper nutrition, we cannot overemphasize it. The reasons being that if we say a lot about it, we cannot exhaust it. And if we say too little about it, we would not have done justice to the real topic. We would not have done well. And then the children would have been left. And remember the quote that says, his name is today. Every time we miss it, every time we don't get it right with their nutrition, we definitely have lost something we will never get again. And that is the reality. And this reality is obvious even in the kind of cases of malnutrition that we see coming from time to time. And please, whenever we say malnutrition, it just sounds like the word bad, when you say malodorous, bad odor. So malnutrition can also be the same thing as bad nutrition. So we can say a person has bad nutrition if it's malnourished. And it is not just about those who are undernourished now, meaning most of the things we know is that, oh, he doesn't have enough food. Gradually, we are shifting to a place where we're having too much food or too much of certain type of food. So one way or the other, overnutrition too is becoming bad nutrition. And if we were to focus more on these particular aspects of development, we will say the brain development and neurocognitive development generally has a lot of role to play in the development of the child in general. Excuse me. Child development refers to a process. It is not just a particular thing. It's not an entity, but it's like a process through which the child becomes independent. So we have children, we have animals that give birth to their child today and they start walking. A human child is not like that. It has to go through a phase where everything has to develop gradually until it becomes independent and ready for improved survival. As against growth, that has to do with the increase in the size and then the stature, both in the length and the weight. There also the development now is like talking about specialization, where the person is able to attain a higher level of degree of specialization to do more critical and more specific functions. So ability to carry those specific functions out determines how developed a person is. We have seen children who at age 10 are unable to do certain things, maybe are unable to walk well or are unable to talk well. That is actually the focus here. It is about development majorly, not necessarily about the growth, because it is very easy to grow. Development is actually a more complex one. So when you talk about optimal development for a child, the maturation of the child and then the intactness of the central nervous system, that's the brain, the nerves in the body, the spinal cord, and all its associated organs actually underlie what normal development is. And for those of us who are in medicine, we talk about domains of development a lot. And then you remember gross motor, fine motor. Gross motor is just simply the looking at the way the muscle functions. Let's say a person is able to walk, a person is able to hold the neck, or a child rather is able to hold the neck, and you expect that at about 2 months thereabouts, and then gradually is able to now sit, gradually can now begin to crawl, and then gradually begins to walk. So you see, that is a process. We're talking about a process here. So you expect a normal growth pattern for that child to go in the pattern I just described. That is the gross motor. Okay, so it's possible for someone to have a gross motor development properly, and then the fine will be problematic. Fine will not have to do with ability to write, ability to do critical things, those things that are not so particularly. So if you see a child that all he does at age 10 is still circling, he cannot even write his name, you're worried, because the child cannot attain a level of independence. The child cannot be allowed to become, let's say, the president of the country when he can hardly write. You understand? So that development is hampered at that point. And then, of course, when you talk about IQ, you see all these things come into play. The social aspect is also very important, because you see them. They are at this point, you expect children to be able to communicate, and gradually they begin to make single words. They begin to talk and say and ba ba ba, and then mama, and then as it begins to go, you see that they begin to interact with the people around them. They begin to smile quite early, and then with time, when you stare a little at them, they smile back at you. Children are quite wonderful to watch. And then, of course, their emotion is also being developed. Communication skills are picked up as they grow. Cognition, ability to know when you say good morning, it's actually morning out there. The cognition to think about things, the cognition to begin to learn in school, to be able to recite their ABC, to be able to write 1 to 10, to begin to talk about 2 times table. Their cognition gradually begins to develop. Learning is also taking place through the process. And for development, the truth is, interdependence is what we aim at. It is the role. It is what everybody, every mother, every child, and every parent is looking forward to, where there is an interdependence between all these areas. They kind of have a smooth interaction between themselves. And the end is actually independence, where you expect that a child that was helpless, that you had to carry all through for the first 2 years, thereabouts, and then now he's beginning to go to school, he's beginning to take the backpack and then go to school himself. He's able to put his own food into his mouth. He's able to now button up his shirt, and then you begin to see that, okay, this child is beginning to take the steps towards independence. That is actually what the development we're talking about here for children is. Yes, growth is very important, but part of growth for a child, part of their total development also includes the growth. And of course, independence is what everybody always look forward to the child having. So some people will say, to sell their products, they say data is life, something is life, whatever is life, food is also life. Because when you see food, you tell that nature has been kind. You tell that God has been good. There are so many aspects, that describes how good food is to the body, how good food is to life. We cannot overestimate the fact that food actually is life, because when a child is born, the difference between that child that was born genetically ready for life and the one that becomes, let's say, the president of a company, or the owner of a brand, or the president of a nation, or the father of children. The difference between that baby and actually the adult is what the baby interacted with while growing up, while counting days. Okay, so now while counting days, definitely you expect that the child will have had certain things come into him. And the only place that they can get it is actually through food. Take, for instance, if a child was born and is just given water from the beginning of life till just imagine, let's even say the child is fed with water only for the first 6 months of life. Nothing else will happen to that child than to die, because water cannot sustain. Now, talking about that, we've now been able to see that, yes, there is something about this food, something is inherent in food that makes us change from one tiny organism to the adults that we become. So we now begin to talk about the first 1,000 days of life. Now, if you remember, okay, I'm not going to talk about remembering because I expect that some people here may not have heard this concept before. The first 1,000 days of life actually talks about that period between conception and the first 2 years, from conception till the second birthday. Okay, I will try to simplify it as possible. So if you have a baby conceived from day 1 to let's say 9 months, okay, 9 months, that's 9 times 30 days, roughly that's about 270 days. Okay, so and then the first 2 years from birth, that's 365, times 2 thereabouts, you have 730 something days. If you were to add that together, that becomes the first 1,000 days we're talking about. So, and it represents a unique period. It's like a window of opportunity for very important aspects of a child's development, particularly the brain. Like I've said, the brain and the CNS generally contributes a lot to the development of the child. It's a period of rapid brain growth, a period of rapid development of the child's psyche, even body-wise, and even when it talks about laying down the foundation for intellectual development, neurodevelopment, cognitive development, even motor development, all forms of development, that period is very crucial to it. And it's also that period of highest plasticity. In neurology, we talk about plasticity as being that period where you can mold a person. That's a period where the future of life is actually molded. So that's the major thing about the first 1,000 days of life. And according to UNICEF, about 2 million children living in this part of the world fail to meet their developmental potential. And that can be traced to that period. So how do we talk about it? We have to correct those deficiencies that occur in that period. And it's been found that by correcting those things that occur in that period, they've been able to increase intelligence quotient by a staggering 10 points. That's a significant improvement in the IQ of children. So it's also a period where we believe that whatever is gotten wrong at that time, a lot of things go wrong. Once something is got wrong at that period, a lot of things go wrong. So in this critical moment, we're talking about the effect of nutrition on optimal development. So nutrition generally talks about food. Yes, that's just what it is. It's food. But what are the demands that are laid based on this particular very vital ingredient? The energy of the child depends on it. How the child moves around, how the child is able to cry, whether the child is able to do certain things. It's clearly determined rather by an amount of energy that is available for the child. So that is on one side, the demand. Immunity for the child. We are at war. Let me put it that way. We are at war with a lot of things interacting with our bodies. The environment has a lot of other organisms that are also trying to survive. Yes, let's put it that way. So our immunity is like the shield that we have to protect us against the effects that could be harmful on our bodies. So it's also a major demand of adequate nutrition. Immunity plays a major role in the survival and development, and definitely those are one of the demands that nutrition that is required of nutrition. So nutritional gaps may occur in immunity if it is not properly done. So immunity can actually be hampered when nutrition goes wrong. Then of course, growth and development, which we cannot overemphasize. The physical growth of a child actually is determined by the amount of nutrients available, for growth. So those are those aspects that the demand holds. Then what about the supply? This is now the biological aspect. We talk about micronutrients, those little things that may be deficient in children, particularly iron, zinc, selenium. Those are the things we call micronutrients. They are not needed in large amounts, but they are very important in the growth and development of a child. And then the macronutrients, of course, a lot of us know that. We talk about carbohydrates, fats, fat and oil rather, vitamins, water, fiber, and roughages, and the likes. And there are also some specialized nutrients when you talk about some prebiotics, the effect on the immunity, and other things like that. So that is what food is expected to supply. The demand of food is on one side, and then what the food is supposed to supply are on the other hand. So the strict balance between these two is what makes the difference. Now, I just listed a very few challenges that right nutrition can actually face when it comes to our environment. I've seen it play out a lot, and ignorance being the first one, of course, because a lot of parents may not know how. Some might not just be their fault, but getting the information from the right place too, or sorry, from the wrong place too, can amount to ignorance. For example, I've seen people say the first milk that comes out of the mother is actually bad, so you should throw it away. Like that thing is not good, it's sour, it's a lot of things, and not knowing that that is actually the foundation of proper nutrition from birth. So what will you do about that? A lot of people don't know the right kind of food to give, how to walk around proper nutrition for their children, what to give, what not to give, transitional periods in the development of a child and what to do. Very vital, little things, but they play a major role in the development, optimal development of these children. They are actually ignorance is one of the things that I have seen play out in different ways. And sometimes it might even be inherited because there are people who have had what their mother did. This was what the mother did at this point, and this is what they must do. I'm sure you too must have heard a lot of things, but not just trying to say that ignorance plays a long role. And then sometimes it may just be certain practices which we need to begin to fight against by pushing out the right information, as at when due. Poverty in this environment in our world cannot be overemphasized. And as a matter of fact, there's even what's it called now, global citizens show that is going on all over the world, and it is to address poverty and even global climate change. So you can imagine poverty still being a major thing, even in the lips of everyone all over the world. It will definitely affect the type of food available, and definitely it would have a direct effect on the nutrition and the proper optimal development of the child. There are a lot of things I put under this evolution. Why I put it that? Because I realized that there are a lot of thank you very much. I realized there are a lot of things that is militating strongly against nutrition. And the truth is, there's no amount of knowledge that we have that we can use to fight the way things are evolving. People prefer to go to Okay. I think I was able to unmute the person. Sorry, I missed to mute the person. Oh, thank you very much. Okay, sorry about the distraction. Well, evolution, why I put it under evolution, because children are beginning to pick up kinds of behaviors that militate against their nutrition, either directly or indirectly. The rise of the social media, all kinds of problems relating to parenting styles. A lot of people seem to have gotten up, people are leaving the lower level of income and moving to the middle, and gradually, and then you see people changing diets. You see people beginning to change. They are not taking the green things anymore. They are taking more of the refined foods. And gradually, we are leaving the things that have kept the human race going and gradually gravitating into things that would, in the long run, contribute to either overnutrition and or even hidden hunger, like we call it, because that is what is called hidden hunger, where people look okay growth-wise, but they lack certain things that will help with specialized development, particularly micronutrients. So somehow our evolution into bigger levels is beginning to militate against adequate nutrition. And then, of course, I would want to talk about the rise of overnutrition. Our children are also becoming obese. In the bid to want to give proper nutrition, they become overnourished in quotes. And then that's also malnutrition as it were, because when a child becomes obese, it affects every aspect of their life, their development. Even a child like that may go to school and sleep all day. It can hardly move around like a more active child. And then they might even be at risk of depression and a lot of other issues, that are also on the rise. So the rise of overnutrition we cannot overemphasize it, but I believe that as people who are knowledgeable, we'll try to keep our children at a balance. So now, the crux of the matter, how do we get child nutrition right? We have to help children to eat the right food at the right time, but it is an uphill task. I saw a parent trying to help a child to eat recently, and then it looked like both the child and the mother was in a fight. And I was wondering, how did it get to this point? Something must have been lost along the line. It's difficult, yes, I know, when it comes to giving a child the right thing. This is good for you, but the child says, no, this is not good for me. That is good for me. Probably biscuit is good for me, or something not so nutritious is good for me. But the parent, so it's like a war. The parents are saying, this is good for you. You met me in life. I know better than you. But the child says, this is sweeter. This is better. It's because we got things wrong, actually. So definitely we need to go back to the roots of where this thing, and we need to begin from where the reality actually started. This is where we have traced the problems to. And we've talked about the first 1,000 days of life. We must protect the rights of children. That is no doubt. In this part of the world, I will always say that the rights of children are actually, children are abused, to say the least. Children are abused. Abuse may necessarily not be a form of doing something. It may be not doing something, because neglect is, this thing is good for this child, but you neglect the child, like, I cannot kill myself. Well, do whatever you like with yourself. That is neglect, and that is against the right of the child. So when a parent indulges a child, it is even against the right of the child for the parent to indulge a child too much into things that would harm him, in the long run. So I will start with talking about protecting children and protecting the girl child in particular. Why did I say that? A girl child that is not well nourished will give birth and continue the line of those who are not well nourished and will not develop well. There are a lot of studies that we have seen on the relationship between malnutrition in children and malnutrition in their children. A lot. You just keep reading and you just almost imagine that this is just a direct relationship. There is no need for any study. We know that this is what will end up happening. Why? If a child is not well nourished, a girl child, the same girl child is going to carry another child. If the girl child lacks things like folates, the child she gives birth to might end up having some congenital problems. If the child does not have congenital problems, the child most likely may begin to have some developmental problems due to lack of certain things the mother should have how would I call it, given to the child while they were while the child was inside, while the child was in utero. I'm trying not to use the big terms, but anyway, just bear with me. A child is supposed to get the first nutrition from the mother. And if the mother herself is malnourished, definitely, what do you expect of the child? Somehow nature has been so good. If the mother eats everything, but the right things, when the right things come to the mother, they go to the child first. Somehow, the child will still get something. So it's important we take care of the girl child, prepare the girl child for the proper development of our own children as well. Well, of course, the men too will support, but it is not the man that carries the child, as it were. The man should support. So it comes to the second aspect where we talk about encouraging, embracing, and supporting breastfeeding. We cannot end breastfeeding discussions if we start tonight, because we will tell you the benefits to the child, the benefits to the mother, to the family, to the community, even to the country at large. It's beneficial. It is the baseline for feeding, adequate feeding, and even development of a child, because even during the breastfeeding process, the child's cognition is also being developed. The child begins to recognize things. The child begins to pick up things from the mother that protect him. In fact, the first milk that comes out from a mother is a form of immunity. So apart from that, development-wise, all the things the child needs to start life, he gets from breast milk. And like we always say, adequate breastfeeding begins, or optimal breastfeeding begins from doing an exclusive period of breastfeeding of 6 months, and then complementary feeds can be added, and then you gradually begin to add up adult diet, including cereals, starting using different methods to make it available for them. The consistency also has to be changed. A lot of practical things, that has to be done when it comes to all that. And then up to 2 years, in fact, sometimes 3 years, and then you can then wean them off. In the process of weaning off, gradually introducing them to things that they will be able to digest in that period, and then go along with life, enjoying the things that are present in their environment, things that will definitely support adequate nutrition. And then, of course, biodiversity of foods early in life. This is where we get it wrong most of the time. You see a lot of mothers, a child that had not eaten, had not tasted amala since he was born till he's 2 years. Now you want to force amala down the throat of the child because you want to stop breastfeeding. That is the wrong time to start. If you are going to feed a child with amala, the amala should have started from the 6th month of life. The consistency is just what you work on. And the truth is that whenever you see these children at that age not being fed our local diets, and we stay on the cereals we buy and all those things, well, they will continue eating it. But remember, it will come a time the cereals will not be able to sustain them. They should have started taking things that are more solid. And at that point, some parents may not be able to even afford the cost of those cereals. And then they just begin to feed them with all kinds of, and it becomes a problem because the child cannot pick the proper nutrients from the things that are introduced, and definitely affects the development of the child. So biodiversity as early as possible. Once exclusive breastfeeding is over, biodiversity should be introduced. Give them all kinds of everything you can imagine. And the truth is, children have been picking those things from the parent, from the mother, from the womb. Since they've been in the womb, everything the mother takes, the flavors have been getting to them. So they are able to recognize these flavors by the time you begin to introduce it to them from the 6th month of life. So it's very important we must get that first those transitional periods right. Okay, and then of course the first 1,000 days, you cannot overemphasize that. Adequate nutrition for the mother when the child is still in utero, that's still in the womb, and then adequate nutrition also for the mother throughout the period of breastfeeding. because what you give to the child determines the ultimate development of the child, especially at that period. And then the transitional phase I talk about here is talking about the period where you want to begin to add things to their diet. You want to add breast milk, you want to add cereals, you want to add cereals, you want to add adult meals. At that point, one has to take it very seriously because it is actually a serious issue. If we gloss over that period, we are definitely going to miss it. Why I'm not talking about getting nutrition and development right for the older children is because most of the things that happen to these children, everything has been wrong from the first 1,000 days. Once the first 1,000 days is missed, definitely a lot of things go wrong. There you see an adolescent that would rather not eat anything. You see them becoming anorexic because they prefer to stay on the junks. And if you don't give them the junks, I mean, they are not eating. That's because the flavors that should have been introduced to them early enough, the routines that should have been put in place early enough has been missed. Now, we need to make food a serious business. It's important that we talk about these routines because family eating time has been shown to improve the tolerability and eating habits of children. Having those times where they know it's time for eating, is no time for TV, is no time for phones, is no time for any other distraction. Food is food, concentrate on it, and once you are done, you can return to whatever things you are doing. And it starts very early. That is why effective parenting will also come into play because you have to encourage them to take these things. It has to be a gradual process. Show some warmth, show sensitivity, apply the routines, and don't give up on every attempt to make them do the right things. Particularly for those who have become grown up. Once you've missed it, you now have to now do extra job to make them, how do I call it now, to be able to comply with the things, that you want them to have. Of course, you have to be as creative as possible. And you see those children who are small, they want to pick those food themselves. Allow them. In fact, the Americans will say you should, there's an allowable mess that a child should have when feeding. So you talk about putting some of those things that they like to eat in a bowl or in a tray. Allow them to pick things themselves. Allow them to understand that they can feed themselves too. They get interested when they are participatory, when they are also involved. And the creativity of parents also cannot be overemphasized because the way you put the food in front of them too matters. I can remember when I was young, and there's this, if you don't like egusi in my house, I mean, it's criminal. Why? Because my mother makes them little chunks that look like, they look like meat. And most of us want to pick the meat and just zap off the table. But she makes the egusi such that despite the soup being there, she now puts chunks that look like meat. Sometimes she might have processed it. Then I didn't even know what tofu meant, but I now understood that, oh, she was trying to mimic something that looks like meat, but it's nutritious because that thing contains a lot of proteins and even oils and some omega things that can help brain development and all that. So inadvertently, we were picking those things and we were eating nutritious things, not knowing that they were just plants, not the meat we think we're fighting over. So parents can actually go a long way. I mean, you can go a long way in, being creative. There are a lot of things you can check online on how food can be made, how the aroma can, invite these children, and how the look too can be. Colors will always attract. And the truth is, the greener the food, the more natural the food, the more work one has to do for children to eat it. So one has to apply creativity to make them, to begin to pick these things. Okay, this thing looks like a shape I know in school. Okay, let me see, what is it? And by the time he's putting in his mouth, the first time, the second time, well, with time, he begins to know that, okay, this thing is not that bad after all. Yes, and then before I leave this place, I'm going to talk about the way parents also introduce foods. Some people say when a child has taken something and he doesn't like it, he doesn't like it. when I hear those things, I feel bad for the children because I know that the parents are just doing this child you're not doing this child a favor by telling him, he doesn't like it, that's why. You've only given this child this thing twice, and probably he vomited self at the point of you giving it. And the next thing the parent just concludes and says, this child does not like eating this thing. And this thing is actually nutritious. That is not the way to go when it comes to introducing feeds to children. The Americans write in their books that if you don't try this thing up to 20 times, you cannot say the child does not like it. 20 good times. Yes. Now, you can imagine our own children. It's going to be more difficult. So I would even say if you don't try it up to 30, 40 times now, our children, probably you've not said. So if you give the child a bowl of fruits today, and he vomits, or he doesn't like it, or he runs away, or he cries, well, no problem, don't give up. You try again, you try again, and you try another time, and you give him time, and you try again, and you hide it inside the food, you try again. You whatever it is you need to do, you must realize that this is good for you. And remember, children are the messages you are going to send. So whatever we plant into them today would actually show up even in their own children. Yes, I said that the healthier and greener the food, the greater the struggle. So let's not cave in. So that's this. I quoted someone and said, don't cave in and let them eat nothing but fast food and sweets. Is what the struggle. Well, as I conclude, I would like to talk about a few other things, but maybe I should just conclude by saying child nutrition is very important. We are going to have to do a lot of work to correct whatever things has gone wrong along the way. I also did not talk about the older children because I realized that most of it had occurred at the young age. If we get it right, particularly during breastfeeding, during transition to adult meals, and as they also begin to grow, adding other additional things, vitamin A, giving them milk up to at least 3-4 years, or even 5, helping with their everyday brain development, we would have done a great job. And then we can sit back and smile, knowing that our children will also take up the uphill task of proper nutrition in their children. Sorry, I took a little bit more of your time. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm grateful for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Ajibola. Thank you for taking it from the very beginning. And what's that for me is the fact that you wrote in the last slide that it's worth every labor. Trust me, it is. It is quite difficult, trying to do it right, do it the right way. It's easier to just walk into a restaurant, buy snacks, buy fast food, and then give it to them or something. But if you want to do it right, we need to put in the effort.
Yeah.
God continue to help us. Okay, do we have any question for our speaker? Any question? I know that he said a lot about children growing up, the early years of a child. We might have a question about our children that are already grown. Any question at all? Do we have any? Or contribution? Question? Okay.
My question is, what exactly do we feed children so that they don't become obese, especially as they grow older? You see children 10, 13 that's already weighing 60 kg, and we get scared. So how do we go about ensuring that we don't have obese children?
Okay. Thank you very much for that question. Can I go ahead?
Yes, you can. Please do.
Thank you. So I'm glad that the question has come. I wouldn't go so much into it, but there is an hypothesis called the Becker's hypothesis about nutrition for children. And it talks about, whatever has been started early, it was used and said when proteins, particularly some proteins, are too much in a child while they're growing up, particularly at that period of infancy, when proteins that the quantity is much, it would have stimulated a process whereby their bodies keep generating things that will lead them to obesity, cardiovascular diseases, and a lot of other things in life. Because of that, most of these, our infant formula producers try to put the amount of protein in their formulas to be as close as breast milk. How did that idea come to being? Because they realized that a child who is breastfed compared with the one that was not and then was fed other things, along the line, those children who were fed other things, because of the high content of protein in what they were fed with, they become obese later in life. That is on one hand. The other aspect is the genetics. Certain people are at risk of becoming big. Their parents are on the big side, and there's tendency for them to also become big. So it starts from that very tender period where the adequate nutrition has been introduced. If it has been introduced, it will not stimulate the tendency to become big. And for those who have the genetic tendencies, they are not likely to go so big if the control mechanisms are put in place. Now, number one control mechanism is breastfeeding. Number two control mechanism is as they begin to grow, we must learn to introduce fibers, fruits, fruits, vegetables, water, exercise into their routines. It's difficult to make a child eat a bowl of salad, but if we have introduced it earlier, it most likely will fill up their stomachs before they even eat some rice that will be too much for their development, that will make them add some weight. So introducing these other things that will not necessarily add calories to the body, to them, can prevent them from becoming obese, and particularly, or strictly speaking, for those who are most likely going to be obese. So for those who that they're already there, they're already obese, we talk about exercise, reducing the quantity of carbohydrates and fats in particular, and then giving them, letting them take water. There are sometimes, instead of them to eat carbohydrates and fats, they can just go on some fruits, things that would cut down the amount of calories they are taking into their system. It is most of the time the carbohydrates children take that become those stored fats, and then you see them begin to gain weight in excess amounts that now makes them obese. Obesity is simply when somebody has a BMI that is greater than 30. You see when somebody is getting beyond 25, is already overweight. So it talks about there's a fixed height, and then the weight is now increasing. So it makes the person obese when the height that is fixed is being overstretched by a bigger weight. So how do we do that? Reduce the amount of calories that they take in. It is the calories and all those things that add to their fat content and distribution that makes them obese. And then the things they need to eat also includes all these things I've mentioned from a tender age. Children who start those things early will find it easy to be able to prevent obesity, especially those who are at risk, and we know them. So also eating junky foods too, being too engrossed into eating things, binge eating matters too. Not having adequate sleep too can contribute to obesity. Watching TV too much too can contribute to obesity. And then of course, nighttime snacking. A child has finished it, you have eaten your dinner. What business do you have with cookies again before sleeping? It's not likely that the child is not going to go obese. And it's common in those children who have everything at their disposal and they can just take them everything. So of course, parenting styles too can help with obesity, especially when you have children who can just be overindulged. They can take whatever they want at any time. And you can tell them after this time, after the dinner, brush your teeth. After your brushing of the teeth, nothing more other than water. Once that is a rule and they live by it, first year, second year, third year, they're not likely to be nighttime bingers. Yes. So, and then of course, social media, when they stay on social media a lot, they begin to pick up all kinds of snacks. Some of them are eating without knowing. That's another thing. They are watching TV, they are carried away, they are on one snack, they are done with the snack, they didn't know, they took another one, they're just gulping it down. So a lot of aspects to this, just a few I've mentioned. I hope it's practical enough.
Yes, thank you.
All right.
All right, I have a question here. Okay, I got your point where you said there's a link between child, mother's nutrition, the mother's nutrition and the child. It's likely that a malnourished mother will have malnourished children. That's just like, it's also like what we've been discussing, like what you have in you before you give birth to your children is likely to be transferred psychologically, spiritually, or otherwise. It's likely to be transferred to the child. So this is also buttressing the point. So peradventure, it has happened that I didn't have a good nutrition growing up and there are some deficiency. And it has been passed down to my child in one way or the other. That is not, is it possible that this thing can be passed out in such a way that we do not know, that it's not that obvious? You know, when someone is deformed or something, it's obvious, you see it out there. But is it possible that it's there without us noticing it, you know, like physically?
Okay. Thank you, Mark, for that question. It may be obvious. Like, for example, I mentioned something about some defects occurring because of absence of certain nutrients. So if the mother does not have adequate folic acids or folates in the body, the child can develop what we know as, we call them neural tube defects generally, because it will affect and deform the child. So the child, once deformed, is deformed. And that thing usually occurs from like the fourth week of life. If a child has a problem with neural tube defects, that one will be obvious, even at birth. There's nothing we can do about that. But the ones that escape all those, and they still have something hidden here and there, with adequate nutrition, with getting things right in the mother as well, you know, from conception. And that's why we talk about proper antenatal care. You know, even a malnourished mother, if he has good antenatal care, it's not likely to transmit any form of abnormal nutrition to the child, because she is definitely going to be given everything she needs, you know, to transfer proper things to the child as it goes, including breastfeeding and all that. And then when the mother is born, supporting her with adequate nutrition to will help her have a good body enough to feed the child properly with the right things. So that can be corrected. That one can be corrected. The other one is not likely to, because the child is already deformed.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Before I ask another question, do we have anybody in the audience, anyone with any question? Okay. All right. These days, we know that a lot is going on with teenagers. Okay, Christabel, Miss Christabel, you can unmute yourself and ask a question.
Okay, good evening, house.
Good evening.
Okay, when you have a situation where you have some children who are particular about a particular kind of food. Let's say, for instance, I have 4 children now. My second daughter from small, she doesn't like swallow. So when you are cooking soup, she just asks, what are you cooking? Is this soup? Just count me out. So initially you'll be like, you must, if you don't like, go and sleep. But at the point you now look at this one, like doesn't like swallow. You now give her room to choose other things she wants to eat at that time. Then how do you deal with that? She's already 10. Then like school food, there's some kind of food you give to these children that sometimes there's a kind of food when I cook to school, my children will ask, what are you giving me to school? Is it beans? In short, the way I took it to school, I'll bring it back for you like that. And really, they'll bring it back. So my husband keeps telling me, why are you so stubborn? If she doesn't want this food, why don't give them what they want? Me, I'm like, a child can't take rice today, tomorrow fried rice, spaghetti. Then when you try to give them sometimes yam, they take yam and egg. But when we tell me that I don't like yam because it make me eat last in the class. Everybody will have finished. I'll still be struggling to masticate, to chew my yam. So I don't like yam. Then, that kind of circumstances, you're not confused that, okay, what do I have to be giving these children to take to school? So most times, sometimes during the, you now look at their timetable is more of rice, spag, only because if this one want potato, the other man don't want potato. So you are forced to you are just bending here and there. So in this kind of situation, what do you do?
All right. Thank you very much for that question. I'm glad you raised something very vital here. And that is when a 10-year-old is refusing something. It's going to be a very difficult thing for you, ma. I must tell you. A 10-year-old already has everything an adult have except the development, to cope independent of herself. So it seems to be that you are going to be fighting an adult. And when you have to tell an adult what not to take, I mean, it's going to be tough. So I think I just have simple solutions for that 10-year-old. That will start from what makes for uniformity's sake. Otherwise, you will wear yourself out trying to provide nutrition for all of them. You cannot give one beans now, give the other rice, give the other yam. This one wants water. This one, you overwork yourself. And I'm sure you said you have 4. I mean, you can't cook 4 meals in a day because this is what they want. And that talks about the parenting style too. If you have a timetable at home, okay, this is what we know we can actually do. It now depends on how you engage them. Could you engage them enough to say, okay, let's come to the drawing board together? Those ones look like they are becoming very wise. So we are going to be drawing the timetable of our food together today. Let everybody come. Let's put our suggestions together and let's draw this thing up. So for Monday, we are going to be taking. For Tuesday, this. Oh, mommy, I don't want this. Okay, because you don't want this, I'm going to add this to it, but you are still going to have to take this. I will add something you like, but I will still give you what I think you should have because I am the wisest here. That kind of a way can work. You have to engage them now. Like I said, it's an uphill task, but a lot of all this can, engaging them can actually work, particularly at this stage. And let them realize, be empathic about it. Oh, I don't like yam because yam sticks in my throat. It's not only them. There are some people who like yam. Yam sticks in their throat, but they enjoy the way it sticks in their throats. So let them know that they're not just going to die from the yam sticking in their throat. If they don't like it boiled, I'm going to make it fried. If you don't like it bulky, I'm going to make it into smaller sizes so that you chew it. It looks like chips for you. So if you're not worried about whether, in fact, you can even share it with your classmate. That classmate that makes you feel like yam is not good, just hear them out. You will see that it is because maybe we feel, these children don't like these things. They may actually like it, but it's not a popular thing to take to school. So, but this is what you think is best for them at this point. Make it a little bit more creative. Check online for all kinds of things, ways, certain foods that, okay, I've talked about beans a little bit. Now, beans is one of the things like the wars that have been fought between parents and children on feeding. And that beans aspect, it is because of the preparation styles. Sometimes the beans will not just appeal to you when it is too soft. When it is too hard too, some will not like it. And if you put beans in rice, particularly for those who like to cook it together with their rice, some people may just handpick the beans out of the food and just eat the rice. But you need to begin to make these children know that these beans is the protein part of this thing. You need it for your brain development. If you engage them, I believe a lot of things will come clear to you. Know why they don't want that particular food and then play around it. Try to be a little creative about it. Beans, you can cook beans in several ways and they will love it. People use these imported beans in salad. What they call that beans that they put in salad. You can just imagine, but they will eat that one sometimes, but they won't eat the local ones. But you cannot put that one in the pot and cook the whole thing and make it. So somehow, I think if we look around and see what is going on, we can begin to now say, okay, this is how to help this one. This one does not like beans so much, but there will be some beans in it. At least there will still be some of this thing, and then help them. Swallow, for example, for some, it is because they didn't know how to eat it from, that tender age. If you want to give a baby swallow, you can mash it, make it almost be like water, make it, almost be like cereal, puree. Put the swallow in something that is, our swallow food usually have they will say draw soup, whatever it is. That swallow goes well with draw soup for children who are still learning how to swallow. It goes as if, it's no friction, it just goes in. Understand? If they don't want to take swallow, there may be a particular soup they may like. Even if they don't like this one, you can then say, okay, fine, I can cook 2 different soup for this meal, but you have to still take swallow. So creativity will help. Parenting style too has to change. And then if you can make a family time for them to eat introduce those things that they don't like. There's a family period where everybody must eat so and so thing. The quantity may be different, but the food is uniform. That way, you also not overwork yourself trying to cook different things for different child based on their demands at that point. Above all, please stay as creative as possible. That is the hallmark of introducing anything, and don't give up. Be creative and don't give up about it. Still try to give it to them. They might come back from school one day and say they ate something like this, and that may just be the beginning of them eating right. So please don't give up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Our time is fast, but I want to ask, is there anyone in the house that have gone through what Mrs. Christabel describes now? And how can you share how you were able to overcome? Because I know that school lunch is a major deal for a lot of us, and you still want to give them the best. So is there anyone here that have crossed that path and have been able to deal it well? What's your advice? Okay, Mrs. Fajuju, unmute yourself and talk.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, I have a little experience on a picky child, a child that doesn't like to eat everything. Please mute the TV, Mama. A child that doesn't like to eat everything. And the experience I had with beans was not so good until lately when we started using the dining. We use the dining table, everybody at the same time. So everybody's eating and monitoring what you're doing at the time you're doing it. So I get to know how many spoons of beans you've eaten. And then I included it in her meal to school. I realized that she prefers to eat the beans with bread. The days when I used to make it very poshy, I'll just add plantain, add fish, add that one, she will not take. But when I started making the beans plain, I realized she likes it with especially sliced bread. She likes to mash it in the bread and cover it up like she's making sandwich. So I just gingerly put sliced bread on my table when it is beans time. Whether I drink my gari or drink my pap, I just put bread there. So even when I give her pap with it, I realized that she would not drink the pap and not eat the beans at all. So to make her eat beans, I don't make pap. It is only with akara that I make pap. Even with the akara, she will drink only the pap and leave my akara for me. So we're still struggling with eating akara. But for beans, we are overcoming it. And then the teachers too help. Like the last time she took beans to school, I had in the communication book that the teacher had to make her sit in a place. You must finish your food. So she didn't have a choice. She took 3 slices of bread to school. She ate half of the beans and the whole 3 slices of bread. But I'm fulfilled because she has had it twice in a row. She had it in the night and she took it to school the next morning. So sometimes it is good to repeat this food, repeat it with them when you know you have not gotten satisfied with with what they've taken. Another issue that I have is children picking tomatoes and onions out of food. We've not been able to overcome that one. When they see it chunky in the food, you want to slice tomatoes and onions for them to make scrambled egg. She will not even touch the egg at all. She'll just tell you, Mommy, I cannot eat this food. We have them in different, like I've been able to overcome beans, but I'm not able to overcome tomatoes and onions in the meal. So what I just do is I blend completely so that she will not reject my food. Then for swallow, we didn't have issues with swallow. All from, right from, our best food used to be amala and ewedu, right from 6 months. Amala and ewedu, we don't have issues with swallow. And then what else? I think most times always that beans, akara, things that are, I don't know. Those are the things that children have issues with, and people can just overcome. The Lord is our strength.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you. I see another hand for Oladele. Okay.
This is Oladele Kolajo. Yeah, thank you, boy. And thank you, doctor, for this session. It's really enriching. I just want to add my voice to the experience that was shared, that I also had that with my daughter. But about beans too, like saying, no, I don't like this, or I prefer to eat rice, all those stuff. But one of the things that helped me was that, my daughter is 6 years, she's 6 years now. And in their school, they've taught them about balanced diet. So one day when she came back and they've taught them about balanced diet, so I had like a kind of revision with her. When we did the revision, different things that different kinds of food, what our different classes are doing. So what happened after some time when they first saw that one, whenever she wants to eat something, she wants to ask me questions, and we are now going to break it down. This is what this one means, is protein, this is this. So that we look at it, can you see this is the balanced diet? So when it now comes to the time when she will say she doesn't want beans, I will now say, can you see now beans is protein, you know what protein does. So if you are not eating this one now, that means you are not going to gain this one. So that education that we have, like what doctor said, really helped. That at some point you will now say, oh, if I'm not eating this, this is what can happen. This is what I'm not gaining. So I just want to say that, like, for the older children, to that extent, like 6-year-old, I could do the education, and that has helped to an extent. But I also have a younger daughter. That one is just two plus. For that one now, she doesn't know anything about the education. It's just to persuade her. Look at it. Daddy too is eating this thing. Mommy too is eating this thing. Your sister is eating this thing. So you too should eat. Then after more persuasion, she gets to that. So I think the persuasion, the education, as they grow older, those will help us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Doctor, do you have something to say?
Well, they said a lot, and I'm really glad that these experiences have come up, because they have really made this more robust. We should, as parents, we can't give up on them. And, they are the seeds we are sowing, for the future. And whatever we do now, we actually mold them. And when they also begin to train their children say no. They remember how much their parents put into them feeding, and then they also wouldn't give up, and it becomes a generational thing. So thank you. That's basically.
Thank you. Okay. I want to ask this question. Do you advise multivitamins and blood tonic, or this for children? Teenagers. I saw last week that Well Woman has Well Teens, something like Well Teens. They have for younger children. What do you advise? And they're quite pricey. What's your advice?
Okay. All these things, I believe, as we begin to grow older, or let me say, as we begin to have more money. Yeah, don't let me put it that. Yes. As we begin to have more money, we realize that, oh, this one is good. Let's use this one. Unfortunately, it's because we don't have those things in the basic things we eat. They are supposed to be a natural, there's what is called recommended daily requirements. Like it is what everybody should have every day. This amount of thing, you get it in this, that. Like I've forgotten his name. The man I just spoke. So
Yeah.
he talked about balanced diet, talking about balanced diet with children. It is because we don't have access to these things we call balanced diet. And that is why we are always in need of looking for additional things, additional this thing, GNLD there, well kid there, all kinds of multivitamins, well woman. Well, everybody is expected to be well. The only thing is that if we eat right, we are well. But because we don't get all those things, maybe because of the kind of diet we take, maybe we need some of those extra things. But it depends on how much of them we get from our diet. If we get enough of them, you know, it will be too much adding all those well everything to it again. So if we work on our diet, we'll spend less on those things. Yeah, a lot of that money can be used to buy the food that the whole family can feed on for, you know, some days. I'm just thinking, I don't know how much it costs because I don't think I would recommend it for anyone. I'm not trying to say people should not use multivitamins, but we can concentrate on what is more important, and that is adequate nutrition, appropriate nutrition, giving the right blend of those things, because our food are meant to contain those things. The things we are running after, we actually have them at our disposal in our local foods, in our, you know, all those natural things. Those are the things present in the natural things that have been extracted, concentrated, and being sold to us as repackaged products. So if we can concentrate on the natural things, I mean, think about it. Let me go back to this slide. What is in all the well things that is not present in all the things I have displayed here? From pantothenic acid, from biotin. I'm talking about the strange things, those things that sound very strange, but they are present in the well because I know the contents of many of them. They are present, almost all the things that are in the well, everything are present in all the fruits we are presented here. If only we can get them and then at least blend them all together. So we'll get everything cheaply, and even bioavailability matters. These ones are easily available for the system to take.
Okay. Thank you. I wanted to ask this like this, the last one was someone dropped it here. As you were talking, it just struck through my mind that can you recommend a book or a site or something for us that we can go and pick up and then try to be like, okay, these are what you need for a day. This is what you can put together for your child for a day or something like that. And then before, let me ask this one also before you answer so that we just close with that. You mentioned it when you started, like what a lot of things we see on forwarded messages, social media and everything. So right now when I'm buying fruit, there's something at the back of my mind because I have read about it that all the whatever we are buying, even the fruits we are buying and the vegetables we are buying, there are no nutrients in them anymore. There are chemicals, this, there are that. And I'm like, oh God, what do we do? So I'm like, okay, maybe we can't get it there. Let us get it in multivitamin. So do you really think that all those, okay, if I get if I get Capul now, washing very well, do you think currently I will still get the nutrient that I'm supposed to get in it?
Okay. All right, let me start from below. The things we still have still contains what is available from our environment. There's nothing we can do about our environment for now. Our environment is what it is. We are fighting pollution, we are fighting global warming, we are fighting climate change. But our natural foods still contains the natural ingredients, which are got from the soil we still have. And the truth is, our staple foods are made from, it's just like the analogy of God forming man from the dust of the earth. So it is still saying that it is still from that dust that it's still going to get nutrients from, including all the animals that are around. So the reality is that our food still contains a large amount of all the things we need. That is the truth. So if you eat apple, like you mentioned, yes, it still contains vitamin C, it still contains the carotenes, you know, it still contains, it has some sugar, it still contains water. The basic things that those things are meant to answer are still present. It now talks about when you leave, let's say, pineapple for a long time, it's supposed to perish. But sometimes, if we leave some of those things, they don't perish like they used to be because the science is beginning to modify some of them. We now have seedless fruits. You understand? All those things are scientific modification of certain aspects, not the content. They still contain at least 90% of what you would have found there maybe 10, 20 years ago. So I will still support that, yes. All these are things, no matter how chemicalized things have become. Yes, we are ingesting a lot of chemicals with some of them, but they still contain the nutrients that we require. And nothing has washed off like leaching, the leaching process that we think. No, it's not really the reality. The reality is that they still contain things that are drawn out from the soil before they come to us. But the problem is, of course, pollution and all these things. So then the second one is about the site. Well, maybe I would say, because before you give people information, you have to verify properly. I don't have one particular source that will say this is where you should go to. But the truth is, when you see those things that are wrong, something in you tells you that, like, someone forwarded something to me. I had to quickly, as I had to be respectful enough to tell the person, sir, please don't sit under the sun. It's not good for your health, because the person said that science and doctors that have gone on, because doctors have gone on strike, they now recommend that the person now type a long list of a lot of things. And I was scared. Drink hot water. If you drink hot water and you drink cold water, both of them are going to become warm when they get into your stomach. So I don't see the blend between. That's the reality. I mean, you begin to see people playing on other people's emotions because things are happening. Ebola period, rub salt on yourself, drink salt water, you're going to get hypertension. You know, a lot of things. So you will know what is wrong sometimes. But I will look around and be sure that I have proper information about them, and then I'll probably be able to forward it. Then about the mixing of food, we talk about balanced diet, you know, carbohydrates, fat and oil, vitamins and minerals, roughages. We know the different classes of food, the type of, for example, let's mention, okay, a proper meal, eba, a wedu, and the stew we use in it, you know, and then the meat is balanced to an extent. The eba is the carbohydrate. The ewedu is the vegetables, you know, that will contain certain types of fruits too, you know, it's a kind of fruity thing. It contains some fiber too, you know, that makes three. There's water in it, definitely. Fat and oil, you will get fat from the animal you have put inside, including some oils, and then you will get oil from whatever you have used in frying it. So you've gotten almost 4 or 5 already. The additional things will now be the vitamins, which can be supplied by fruits. So even our basic food, if we look at it very well, we are able to mix it properly and get a blend. So we should have variety. If you eat apples today, you can take oranges tomorrow, you know, like that. That way we'll be able to get what is in apple that is not in banana today, and the one that is in watermelon tomorrow that is not in. So along the line, we'll still pick a lot of these things. So if we look around very well, we can create a very good timetable, including schedules for what's it called now, fruits in between, and even for children, snacks are still very important. Yes, they still recommend up to 2 snack times for them per day during growth. Yes, it's not like they will not eat all those things at all, but it can be a bait to even make them eat. Oh, take your lunch. After your lunch, this is your snack. You see them run after the lunch and then they finish it. Mommy, I finished. Yeah, take your snack. That snack is the bait. Then you can put forward what would be of benefit to them. So we have to be creative. So basically, if I get those things, I then forward it. But at least we get the basic idea of mixing the fruits to make it as balanced as possible.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We can
sir.
go on and on and on. It's 9:30 already,
Sure.
and it would be good to release everyone so that we can enjoy the rest of the weekend. I hope we've gotten value. I have been one thing or the other, and I'm sure going to go and make another timetable with the kids now, so that we can follow it together. So thank you everyone for joining. This is Creative Nurturers Group. What we do is to read together, to get ourselves abreast of what is happening around and apply our readings to help our children, to nurture them in the best way. The focus is training up our children to fear God in this generation we have found ourselves, where there is immorality and so much going on around us. My prayer again today is that God will help us to be able to do the needful in Jesus' name. Once again, Dr. Ajibole, I want to thank you. We don't have silver and gold, we don't have, but we live with the message that we pray that God will attend to your ways and continue to increase you and bless you in Jesus' name. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Yes, we have messages appreciating you on the chat box. I also want to say thank you to everyone that joined. If you want to join our group, just send me a WhatsApp. We have a small group. We are growing daily. Just to rub minds together and share ideas to grow better. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Dr. Ajibole. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, baby girl.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.